The meeting room on the space station Concordia was quiet except for the soft hum of air filters. Large windows showed the stars beyond, and in the center sat a round table where the most important beings in the galaxy gathered once every month. Ambassador adjusted her simple blue suit and smiled at the other council members. She had been doing this for 12 years now, and the routine never changed much. The Galactic Council met, they talked about problems, and she usually suggested ways to solve things without fighting. The other species at the table looked very different from humans. They looked like tall, thin ghosts made of light blue mist. They spoke in whispers that sounded like wind through trees. They looked like giant insects with 4 arms and shiny black shells. Their voices clicked and buzzed when they talked. The resonants were living crystals that glowed different colors when they had emotions. They made musical sounds instead of words. There were others too. They looked like walking trees with bark for skin. The membrane people were flat and see-through, floating in special tanks. And then there were they looked like huge lizards that walked on 2 legs. They had sharp teeth, claws, and thick armor-like skin. Their leader today who was bigger than the others and had scars all over his face. He sat at the table like he owned it, showing his teeth in what might have been a smile but looked more like a threat. Had been representing humanity for 12 years, and before her, other human ambassadors had done the same job for 25 years. 37 years total since humans joined the Galactic Council. In all that time, humans had earned a reputation as the peacekeepers. They were the ones who said, "Let's talk about this," when others wanted to fight. They were patient, kind, and always tried to find ways for everyone to get along. Most of the other species thought humans were a little strange but mostly harmless. Humans did not have claws, sharp teeth, or thick skin. They were not very big or very strong compared to most aliens, but they were good at talking and seemed to care about everyone getting along. Some species found this amusing. Others found it useful. Today's meeting was about the same old problem. The supremacy was taking over more space. They had big fleets of warships, and they used them to claim planets and moons that did not belong to them. Smaller, weaker species had to leave their homes when they showed up. "They have taken 12 more mining stations this month," said Ambassador of the. Her voice buzzed with anger. "They did not ask permission, they just took them." Made a sound like a laugh. "We do not need permission to take what we can hold. The weak should move aside for the strong. This is the way of the universe." Several other ambassadors started talking at once, their voices rising. The resonance flashed red and orange, which meant they were upset. They whispered faster, sounding like a storm wind. Waited for them to quiet down, then spoke in her calm, steady voice. "Perhaps we could arrange a meeting between thee and the affected species. There might be ways to share these resources that work for everyone. Maybe some kind of trade agreement." Turned his big head toward her. His yellow eyes looked amused. "Always the same with you humans. Talk, 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 share and be nice. You think the universe cares about your feelings." "I think," said with her usual gentle smile, "that most problems can be solved if everyone sits down and really listens to each other. There are usually ways to find common ground." Some of the other ambassadors nodded. This was exactly what they expected from the human representative. Had never raised her voice, never got angry, never suggested anything that might lead to violence. She always looked for peaceful solutions. "Common ground," repeated and laughed again. "The only common ground is the dirt where the weak fall when the strong take what they want." Was about to respond when something buzzed softly in her ear. It was her personal communication device, set to only interrupt for the most urgent messages. She touched the side of her head, and information flowed directly into her brain through the small implant all humans had. The message was short and simple, but it changed everything. "Forces have glassed New Geneva. No survivors. Children's colony. Authorization Omega-7 confirmed." Smile never changed. Her posture stayed the same. Her voice remained calm and friendly, but something deep inside her shifted, like a door opening that had been locked for a very long time. "Excuse me for just a moment," she said to the other ambassadors. "I need to check something with my government back on Earth, just routine business." She stood up and walked to one of the small communication booths along the wall of the meeting room. The other ambassadors barely noticed. They had seen her do this many times before. Humans always seemed to need permission from their home world before making any important decisions. But was not asking for permission. She was asking for authorization to stop asking for permission. New Geneva had been a small human colony on the edge of known space. It was not important for trade or military purposes. It was just a place where humans went to raise their children in peace, away from the busy, crowded inner worlds. 3,000 people lived there. Half of them were under the age of 16. Had been past tense now. Stepped into the communication booth and sealed the door behind her. The booth was designed to block all listening devices and give complete privacy. She activated her secure channel and spoke quietly. "This is Ambassador. I need to confirm Omega-7 authorization." The voice that answered came from Earth, but it sounded tired and sad. "Confirmed, Ambassador. New Geneva is gone. War fleet took target practice on the settlement. They seemed to find it amusing." Felt something she had not felt in 12 years of diplomatic service. Something hot and sharp rose up from deep in her chest, but her training held. Her voice stayed steady. "Requesting Council observation protocol. I want them to see it all, every second." "Confirmed. All stations are being. Civil mode disengagement begins in 30 minutes. Good luck." "Thank you." Ended the call and sat quietly in the communication booth for a moment. Around the galaxy, every human was receiving the same message she had just sent. On space stations, colony worlds, exploration ships, and military bases, humans were quietly moving to secure positions. Those who worked closely with aliens were finding excuses to step away, not because they disliked their alien friends, but because they loved them too much to let them see what was coming. For 37 years, humanity had been very, very careful to never let the galaxy see what humans were really like when they stopped being polite. Returned to her seat at the council table with the same calm smile she always wore. The other ambassadors had continued their discussion about the expansion problem. Nothing seemed different about her as she sat down and pulled up her data pad to take notes. But if someone had been watching very carefully, they might have noticed small changes. The way held her shoulders was a little different now. Her breathing had become slower and deeper. When she looked she no longer looked away politely when he stared back. Instead, she met his gaze directly and did not blink. "Ah, the human returns," said with another of his harsh laughs. "Did your masters on Earth give you permission to have an opinion yet?" Smiled and made a note on her data pad. "Just checking in with leadership, standard procedure." The discussion continued. Ambassador talked about the economic impact of expansion. The representative whispered about the refugee crisis as displaced populations fled territory. The resonance flashed various colors as they sang their concerns about increasing violence in the outer systems. Listened to all of this and took careful notes, but her responses were different now. Instead of suggesting compromise and negotiation, she asked specific questions. How many ships did they have in each fleet? What were their usual attack patterns? How long did it take them to fully occupy a conquered system? "Why do you need to know these things?" asked Ambassador, clicking her mandibles nervously. "Are you planning some kind of diplomatic intervention?" "Just trying to understand the full scope of the situation," replied. "It helps to have complete information when looking for solutions." Seemed pleased by the questions. He enjoyed talking about military power. "We have over 3,000 warships," he said proudly. "Each one can destroy a small moon. Our smallest attack fleet has more firepower than most species have in their entire military." "Impressive," said, making another note. "And these ships are spread out across how much territory?" 15 star systems and growing," answered. "Soon it will be 20, then 50. The strong take what they want and no one can stop us." Nodded and wrote this down too. Then she looked up with the same friendly expression she had worn for 12 years of these meetings. "I have a question about your recent operations," she said. "There was a small human settlement in the 442 system, New Geneva. Did your forces encounter any resistance there?" Tilted his massive head, thinking. "Oh yes, the breeding colony, no resistance at all. They did not even have defensive weapons. My commanders used it for target practice. Good training for the young warriors." "Target practice," repeated, still writing. "Yes, the soft skins tried to surrender, but surrender is for warriors. These were just breeders and their spawn. We gave them a clean death from orbit, very efficient." Several other ambassadors shifted uncomfortably. Even by standards, destroying civilian populations was considered extreme. The resonance flashed deep purple, which meant they were disturbed. Finished writing and looked up again. "How many casualties?" "All of them," said with what might have been pride. 3,000 soft skins. Half of them were small ones, barely worth the plasma charges but good for practice." "Children," said quietly. "What?" "The small ones, we call them children." Waved one clawed hand dismissively. "Soft skin words for soft skin concepts. The strong survive, the weak die. This is natural law." Set down her writing stylus and folded her hands on the table. Around the room, the other ambassadors noticed that the temperature seemed to have dropped a few degrees. "Natural law," she said. "That's an interesting way to put it." For the next few minutes, asked more questions. She asked about military doctrine, their command structure, and their long-term expansion plans. She asked these questions in the same polite, interested tone she used for discussing trade agreements. But something about her had changed in a way that made the primitive parts of several alien brains start sending warning signals. The ambassador began to glow a little brighter, which happened when they were nervous. Ambassador kept cleaning her face with her arms, a stress behavior for the... Even some of the warriors standing guard around the room seemed restless. "You are asking many military questions, human," said finally. "This is not your usual way." "I'm just trying to understand," said. "My species likes to have all the facts before we make decisions." "What decisions? You have no military, you have no weapons that matter. Your people are farmers and traders. What decisions could you possibly make that would matter to the supremacy?" Looked at her watch. 23 minutes had passed since she received the message about New Geneva. In 7 more minutes, something that had been locked away for 37 years would be set free. "Well," she said, "we could decide to stop being polite." There was something in the way she said this that made lean forward. For just a moment, his predator instincts told him he was looking at something dangerous. But that was impossible. Humans were the weak ones. Everyone knew that. "Stop being polite," he laughed. "What will you do? File a complaint? Request a strongly worded statement?" Smiled. It was the same warm, friendly smile she had worn to thousands of these meetings. But now, somehow, it looked different. Like the smile a cat might give a mouse. "Something like that," she said. Across the galaxy, humans were receiving their final confirmations. Military units that had been disguised as cargo haulers powered up weapon systems that violated 3 different galactic treaties. Civilian colonists opened hidden armories that contained enough firepower to level cities. Human crew members on mixed-species ships quietly moved to positions where they could take control if necessary. And in the brains of every human, small devices that had been installed at birth began to shut down. These devices had suppressed certain instincts, certain capabilities, certain ways of thinking that humanity had decided were too dangerous for galactic civilization. Checked her watch again, 3 minutes to go. "You know," she said to the assembled council, "there's something I should probably mention, something that's not in the public records of humanity's membership agreement." "What is that?" asked Ambassador. "Article 7 said. It's a clause that most of our allies don't know about. It states that humanity's peaceful behavior is conditional. If certain lines are crossed, if certain threats are made against human genetic survival, then we are authorized to discontinue what we call civil mode." The other ambassadors looked confused, looked amused. "Civil mode?" he asked. "What is this?" Looked at her watch one more time. The display read exactly 30 minutes since she had received the message about New Geneva. All across the galaxy, in the minds of 6 billion humans, something that had been sleeping for 37 years opened its eyes. "It's what we call it," said, and for the first time in 12 years, her voice carried a harmonics that made every primitive instinct in the room scream danger. "When we pretend to be civilized." The council chamber fell silent after spoke those words. Several of the alien ambassadors looked at each other with confusion. The resonance had stopped glowing entirely, which only happened when they were very afraid. Even the air filtration system seemed quieter. Stood up slowly from her chair. When she moved, it was different from before, more controlled, more precise, like every motion had a purpose. "For 37 years," she said, "humanity has been operating under what we call the Civil Oversight Protocol. Every human in space has neural implants that suppress certain behavioral patterns. These implants make us more patient, more cooperative, more willing to seek peaceful solutions to problems." Ambassador clicked her mandibles nervously. "Neural implants. You control your own behavior artificially." "We control our natural behavior, yes," said, "because our natural behavior is not compatible with galactic civilization. We learned this early in our space exploration. Other species need protection from what humans are like when we stop trying to be nice." Slammed one massive fist on the table. "Enough of this soft-skin nonsense. You speak in riddles. Humans are weak. Everyone knows this. You have no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. You cry over hurt feelings and ask permission for everything." Looked directly at him. Really looked at him, in a way she had never done before in 12 years of diplomatic meetings. Her eyes were still brown, still human, but something fundamental had changed in them. Something that made warrior instincts suddenly wake up and start screaming warnings. "We don't have claws," she said quietly. "We make them. We don't have armor, we build it. We don't have natural weapons." She paused, and her smile became something that would have made a great white shark proud. "We are natural weapons." The communication system in the chamber suddenly activated without anyone touching it. Had used her neural implant to access it directly, something she had never revealed she could do. "Computer, display current galactic threat assessment for the Supremacy Fleet positions." The main screen lit up with a star map showing the locations of military forces. Red dots marked their fleet positions across 15 star systems. There were indeed thousands of ships, just as had boasted. "Now computer, overlay current human vessel positions." Blue dots appeared on the map. They were scattered everywhere, often very close to the red positions. But these were marked as cargo ships, research vessels, mining platforms, and civilian transports. "I don't understand," said the ambassador in their whisper voice. "These are not military vessels." "No," agreed. "They're not marked as military vessels, that's the point." She touched her neural interface again. "Computer, execute authorization Omega 7. Remove civilian designations from all human vessels and display actual combat capabilities." The blue dots on the map suddenly changed. What had been marked as a simple cargo hauler near territory now showed as a heavy weapons platform. A mining ship became a destroyer. A research vessel revealed itself as a battle cruiser with stealth capabilities. The numbers were staggering. For every red ship on the map, there were now 3 blue human vessels in position to attack it. Stared at the display. This is impossible. We have intelligence reports on all these ships. They have no weapons, no military crews. Your intelligence reports were correct, said. Yesterday, today things are different. As if on cue, reports started coming in over the emergency communication channels. The voices were panicked, confused, speaking in the various languages of military commanders. Fleet 7 is under attack. Civilian vessels have opened fire with weapons that should not exist. This is impossible. A human research ship just destroyed 3 of our destroyers. They're everywhere. The cargo ships were hiding battle fleets. Listened to the reports with the same calm expression she used for trade negotiations. Computer, open a channel to all human vessels in the combat zone. Channel open, Ambassador. This is Ambassador speaking to all human personnel. You are authorized to discontinue civil mode as of now. Threat designation is Supremacy Military Forces. Classification is Total War. Eliminate all hostile targets. Leave no survivors. The response that came back over the communication system was not in the patient, polite tone that other species had grown used to hearing from humans. It was crisp, professional, and absolutely terrifying. Acknowledged, Ambassador. Civil mode disengaged. Beginning extermination protocols. Surged to his feet, his massive form towering over the council table. You cannot do this. This is a trick, some kind of deception. Looked up at him without moving from her chair. She seemed smaller than ever compared to his huge frame, but somehow this made the situation more frightening, not less. Sit down, she said. It was not a request. It was not a suggestion. It was a command, spoken with the kind of authority that made his knees buckle before he could think about it. He sat down hard in his chair, looking shocked at his own response. Better, said. Now let me explain what you're seeing. For 37 years, the galaxy has known humans as peaceful traders and diplomats. This is because we spent 37 years making sure that's all you ever saw. Every human you've met, every human ship you've encountered, every human colony you've visited has been operating under the Civil Oversight Protocol. She gestured at the screen, where the red dots representing forces were beginning to disappear one by one. That protocol suppresses our natural instincts. It makes us patient when we want to be aggressive. It makes us diplomatic when we want to be violent. It makes us ask for permission when we would rather just take what we want. More reports flooded in over the emergency channels. Commanders screaming about impossible attacks, about humans moving faster than should be possible, about weapons that violated every treaty in known space. The thing is, continued, humans are not naturally peaceful. We are apex predators from a death world. Before we reached space, we hunted every large predator on our planet to extinction. We fought wars that killed millions of our own species just to prove points. We conquered our entire world not through cooperation, but by being better killers than anything else that lived there. Ambassador was backing away from the table, her insect instincts telling her to run. The resonance had turned completely black, a color none of the other species had ever seen them display before. When we joined the Galactic Council, said, we realized that our natural behavior would be seen as monstrous by most species, so we changed ourselves. We put limiters on our aggression, our competitiveness, our predatory instincts. We taught ourselves to be the peaceful mediators you needed us to be. She looked directly at again, but there were always conditions, lines that could not be crossed, actions that would force us to remove those limiters. The children whispered. The children confirmed. You attacked a colony full of human children. You killed them for target practice. You laughed about it. Her voice became very soft and very dangerous. That was a mistake. The emergency reports had stopped coming in from space. The silence was somehow worse than the screaming had been. Stood up again and smoothed down her blue diplomatic suit. The supremacy no longer exists. It took approximately 43 minutes to eliminate all military assets, capture all leadership personnel, and sterilize all major population centers. The extinct threat level has been confirmed. She looked around the table at the terrified faces of the other ambassadors. Civil mode will be re-engaged in 72 hours. Until then, I suggest everyone be very, very polite to any humans they encounter. The chamber was completely silent, except for the sound of several species breathing very quietly. "Any questions?" asked cheerfully. The silence in the council chamber stretched on for several long seconds. Then Ambassador found her voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "You said, extinct threat level you cannot mean." "I mean exactly what I said," replied, settling back into her chair with the same casual manner she used when discussing trade routes. "The supremacy is extinct, not defeated, not conquered, extinct." The ambassador began to glow brighter, which was what happened when their species was in extreme distress. "But they have billions of people across 15 star systems. Surely you don't mean all of them." Pulled up her data pad and began scrolling through reports that were coming in real time. "Computer, display current status report on space." The main screen changed to show a tactical overview of what had been territory. Red zones that had marked their systems were turning gray one by one. Numbers scrolled down the side showing population centers, military bases, and industrial facilities. All of them were marked with the same status: eliminated. "This is impossible," said, but his voice was different now. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that might have been fear. "No one can move that fast. No military force in the galaxy can coordinate attacks across 15 star systems simultaneously." "You're right," said without looking up from her reports. "No military force in the galaxy can do that, but we're not really a military force, are we? We're something else entirely." She touched her neural interface again. "Computer, show security footage from Command Ship Dominator." A new window opened on the main screen. It showed the interior of what was clearly a warship. The corridors were wide and tall, built for beings the size of. The walls were covered in the kind of armor plating that could stop heavy weapons fire. In the footage, 3 humans walked down one of these corridors. They looked exactly like the humans everyone was familiar with: average height, no natural weapons, wearing simple work clothes. These 3 had been listed in the ship's records as engineering consultants, hired to help optimize the ship's power systems. "These humans were aboard the Dominator for 8 months, explained. "They helped improve engine efficiency by 12%. They were polite, helpful, and completely non-threatening. Watch what happens when they receive the Omega-7 authorization." On the screen, the 3 humans suddenly stopped walking. For a moment, they stood perfectly still. Then they looked at each other and nodded. When they started moving again, everything was different. Their posture changed. Their movements became fluid, precise, predatory. One of them walked to a wall panel, tore it open with her bare hands, and pulled out what looked like ship components. In seconds, she had assembled them into something that was clearly a weapon. "That's impossible," breathed Ambassador. "Those are just power couplers and data cables. You cannot make weapons from." Her words cut off as the human on the screen used her improvised weapon to slice through a blast door that should have been able to stop tank fire. The footage continued. Warriors came running, armed with weapons that could punch holes in starship hulls. There were dozens of them, trained fighters with natural armor and claws. They should have overwhelmed 3 unarmed humans in seconds. Instead, the council watched in horrified silence as the humans moved through them like ghosts. They were faster than anything that size should be able to move. They calculated angles and trajectories in their heads while fighting. They used the warriors' own momentum against them, turning their strength into weakness. But the worst part was how calm they were. They didn't roar or scream or show any emotion at all. They just systematically, efficiently, killed everything in their path. "The human female there," said, pointing to the screen, "is Sarah. She has 2 children and likes to grow flowers. Before we left Earth, she taught elementary school. The male with the improvised blade he writes poetry and plays classical guitar. The third one is David. He's working on his degree in ancient literature." On the screen, Sarah picked up a warrior that outweighed her by 300 pounds and threw him through a steel bulkhead. "These are not soldiers," continued. "These are ordinary human civilians who happened to be on a ship when civil mode was disengaged. Every human you've ever met has this potential inside them. We've just been very careful to keep it locked away." Hal whispered, "How is this possible?" "Humans evolved on a world that was trying to kill us every day," explained. "We had to become the most efficient killers on our planet just to survive long enough to reproduce. But that kind of aggression doesn't work well in civilized society. So when we joined the galactic community, we decided to suppress it artificially." She pulled up another display. "Computer, show comparative physical statistics for human baseline versus civil mode." Numbers appeared on the screen that made several ambassadors gasp. Strength increased by 300%. Reaction time improved by 600%. Pain tolerance increased by 400%. Intelligence and tactical processing improved by 200%. "Civil mode doesn't just suppress aggression," said. "It suppresses our physical capabilities as well. Turns out when humans stop holding back, we're much more dangerous than we appear." More footage played on the screen. A human cargo ship that had been carrying agricultural supplies suddenly revealed hidden weapons bays. The farmer at the controls destroyed 6 destroyers in under 2 minutes. On another screen, a human research station that studied star formation unveiled defensive systems that turned an entire battle fleet into scrap metal. "Every human installation in space has been built this way," explained. "Dual purpose. We can be peaceful researchers and traders when civil mode is active. When it's not," she gestured at the destruction playing out on the screens, "we become something else." Ambassador was trying to back toward the door, but her legs seemed to have stopped working properly. "You've been lying to us. This whole time, you've been lying about what you are." "Not lying," corrected. "Just being polite. There's a difference." The tactical display updated again. More systems went gray. The population counters continued to decrease toward 0. "How long will this continue?" asked the representative in a voice so quiet it was barely audible. Checked her reports. "It's already over, actually. The last population center was eliminated 14 minutes ago. Total time for complete species extinction, 4 hours and 17 minutes. She said this with the same tone she might use to mention the weather. Stared at the screen showing his extinct civilization. "We had 3,000 warships, battle fleets that could crack planets. How did you destroy all of them so quickly?" "Oh, we didn't destroy your fleets," said. "We never engaged them at all. We just killed everyone who knew how to operate them, and everyone who could learn how to operate them, and everyone related to anyone who might someday learn how to operate them." She paused thoughtfully. "It's much more efficient to eliminate the operators than the equipment." The horror of this statement settled over the council chamber like a cold fog. What was describing wasn't a military victory. It was systematic extermination performed with the efficiency of accountants and the detachment of machines. "Your monsters," whispered. Looked at him with the same friendly expression she had worn for 12 years of diplomatic meetings. "No, we're predators. We're very good at making things extinct. We've had millions of years of practice," she smiled. "The difference is, usually we're polite about it." She stood up and began gathering her materials. "I'll be filing a complete report with the council secretary. The territories will be placed under human administration for cleanup operations. I expect this will take several weeks. Cleanup? Asked Ambassador. Making sure there are no survivors, explained helpfully. We're very thorough. It's important to be thorough when dealing with extinct threats. She looked around the table at the terrified faces of her fellow ambassadors. Oh, don't look so worried. Civil mode will be reactivated in 72 hours. After that, we'll go back to being the same friendly, peaceful humans you've always known. Picked up her briefcase and headed toward the door. Just before she reached it, she turned back. Same time next month for our regular meeting, she asked brightly. The council chamber remained silent for a full 10 minutes after left. No one moved. No one spoke. They all sat staring at the main display screen, which still showed the gray zones where the supremacy used to exist. Finally, Ambassador found her voice. Did that really happen? The representative whispered something that translated roughly as the peaceful ones were never peaceful. The resonance had turned a color that their species had never displayed in the presence of other beings before. It was the deep, dark purple that meant existential terror. They were processing the realization that for 37 years they had been sharing space with the most efficient killers the galaxy had ever produced. Computer, said Ambassador, her voice shaking, confirmed status of systems. All military assets eliminated. All population centers eliminated. All industrial facilities eliminated. Total estimated survivors, 0. The number hit the remaining council members like a physical blow. 0 survivors. An entire species, billions of individuals, wiped from existence in less than 5 hours. How did we not know? Asked the. How did none of our intelligence services discover this? Ambassador pulled up her own data files, scrolling through decades of reports about human activities. Look at this. Every analysis, every study, every intelligence report about humans says the same thing. Peaceful, non-aggressive, no significant military capabilities. She paused at a particular file. This report is from just last month. It specifically states that humans pose no military threat to any galactic power. It recommends that they continue to be used as neutral mediators because of their non-violent nature. They weren't lying in those reports, said the representative, speaking for the first time since the revelation began. The tree-like being's bark was darker than usual, a sign of deep distress. The humans really were peaceful. They made themselves peaceful. But why? Asked the membrane person floating in their tank, their transparent form pulsing with agitation. Why suppress their natural abilities? Why pretend to be weaker than they are? The answer came from an unexpected source. The chamber's communication system activated, and's voice filled the room. She had not left the station after all. May I rejoin the session? I believe I can answer that question. Before anyone could respond, walked back into the chamber. She moved with the same controlled precision she had displayed during the revelation, but her expression had softened somewhat. You asked why we suppress our natural abilities, she said, taking her seat again. The answer is simple, because our natural abilities are incompatible with civilization. She gestured to the screen still showing the gray zones of former space. This is what humans do when we stop trying to be civilized. We don't just win wars. We eliminate entire species with the efficiency of an extinction event. We do it quickly, quietly, and thoroughly. Pulled up a new file on her data pad. When humanity first reached space and encountered other species, we tried to interact normally, the way we interacted on Earth with other humans. The results were unfortunate. Images appeared on the main screen. They showed early contact scenarios between humans and various alien species. All of them ended the same way, with the alien species extinct and humans colonizing their former territories. We didn't mean to do it, continued. We thought we were just defending ourselves or competing fairly for resources, but it turned out that what humans consider normal competitive behavior is what the rest of the galaxy considers genocidal aggression. She looked around the table at the frightened faces of her fellow ambassadors. So we made a choice. We could either learn to suppress our natural instincts, or we could accept that we would eventually be alone in the galaxy because we had killed everyone else. The Civil Oversight Protocol, whispered Ambassador. The Civil Oversight Protocol, confirmed. Every human who leaves Earth has neural implants installed that suppress our predatory instincts, our competitive drive, and our physical capabilities. We literally make ourselves weaker and more passive so that we can coexist with other species. The Resonant Council member flashed a pale green color, which meant they were asking a question. Their musical language was translated by the chamber's systems. Why reveal this now? Why show us your true nature? His expression became very serious. Because some lines cannot be crossed, they attacked a human children's colony. They killed 3,000 civilians, half of them under the age of 16. They did it for target practice and they laughed about it. She stood up and walked to the viewing window that showed the stars beyond the station. There are some threats that require us to remember what we really are. Some situations where being polite is less important than protecting our young. But now we know, said the representative. Now we know what you're capable of. How can things go back to the way they were? Turn back to face the council. Because in 71 hours and 14 minutes, civil mode will be reactivated. The implants will come back online. The suppressors will engage. And humanity will go back to being exactly what you've always known us to be, peaceful, patient mediators who prefer talking to fighting. Just like that, asked Ambassador. Just like that, confirmed. The humans who eliminated them will go back to their jobs as farmers, researchers, traders, and diplomats. They'll forget the feeling of hunting prey and remember the satisfaction of growing crops. They'll forget the thrill of perfect violence and remember the joy of discovering new star systems. She returned to her seat and picked up her stylus, preparing to take notes as if this were any other council meeting. But there's one thing you should understand, she said, her voice carrying that harmonics that made everyone's survival instincts scream warnings. Civil mode is not permanent. It can be disengaged again if necessary. And now you know what happens when it is. The implications of this statement settled over the council like a weight. They had spent 37 years thinking of humans as the galaxy's peacekeepers. Now they knew that the peacekeepers were actually apex predators who had chosen to limit themselves for the good of galactic civilization. "What do you want from us?" asked the representative. Smiled, and for the first time in hours, it looked like the warm, friendly smile they remembered. The same thing we've always wanted: peace, cooperation, a galaxy where different species can coexist and thrive together. She paused, then added quietly, "We just want you to understand that our commitment to peace is a choice, and choices can be reconsidered." The Council voted unanimously to grant humanity expanded territorial rights in the former systems. They voted to establish new protections for human civilian populations. They voted to create a special council committee dedicated to ensuring that human children would never again be threatened by any galactic power. As the meeting concluded, gathered her materials and prepared to leave. The other ambassadors watched her with a mixture of fear and respect that had never been there before. "Same time next month?" she asked cheerfully as she headed for the door. This time, everyone nodded quickly. After she left, the council members sat in silence for a long time. They were trying to process the fact that for 37 years, the most dangerous species in the galaxy had been asking politely for permission to exist peacefully among them. And now they knew what happened when that politeness was withdrawn. In the distance, through the viewing windows, they could see human ships moving through space. Cargo vessels, research platforms, exploration ships. They looked exactly the same as they had yesterday. But now the council members knew the truth. Humanity had never been the weak species seeking protection from stronger powers. Humanity had been the strongest power in the galaxy, carefully pretending to be weak so that everyone else could feel safe. The masquerade was over. The truth was revealed, and paradoxically, this made the galaxy a much safer place. Because now everyone understood the one rule that really mattered in galactic politics. Be very, very nice to human children.